There we go. What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another video, and today I have my top 4 Fire King locals deck profile. Disclaimer, the locals was like 16 to 20 people, and it's like there were some competitive people there, and there were a lot of rogue players there. However, I went 4-0 to get to top 4, lost my top 4 match, and yeah, this deck was super fun to pilot, really intricate, and sorry about no video on the Thursday that I got back from vacation. As you can tell from how I sound, I have not been feeling great. And one last thing I want to say before I fully get into the deck profile is, I have Modern Warfare 3. I plan on streaming it. It runs just fine on my computer, which was one thing I was worried about, was if Modern Warfare 3 would run on my computer, and it runs fine. And without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about chickens. Flaming chickens. Starting us off, we have 3 copies of the chicken nugget, that is Fire King Ponix. Ponix is your 1-card combo, so you want to see this as often as possible. Also, one more thing, forgot to mention, I picked up 3 structure decks and then put staple cards that I had on me into the deck while I was down in Texas visiting, and I played the locals down there. It was fun. So this is like 3 structure decks with at least $35 of upgrades. So take this with a grain of salt, but this was a list that I took to the top 4, and I had a lot of fun playing. So Ponix, what does he do? Well, if a monster whose attribute was originally fire is destroyed, he can special summon himself. When he's normal or special, he adds a Fire King spell trap from your deck to your hand. During the standby phase after he's destroyed, you add him from your graveyard back to your hand. Sorry about the sniffle. So he is a really good way to keep a fire monster in your hand. He's a good way to keep your engine rolling, and he keeps the deck kind of alive and going. Really strong card. He 1-card combos into a fairly decent end board. And one thing I will say about this list is it just refuses to give up. It will build a board and build a board and build a board until it can't build a board anymore. So keep that in mind as we continue. Next, we have 3 copies of Fire King High Avatar Kirin. The new level 8 Kirin is a during the main phase quick effect. If it's in your hand, you can destroy one other fire monster in your hand or that you control to special summon it. And then when he is destroyed, you can summon a Fire King from graveyard to the field and then non-targeting destroy a card your opponent controls. So pretty solid card all around. And then we move on to 2 copies of the new and improved Big Chicken Sacred Fire King Garunix. This Garunix is amazing. So he has his effect is if a fire monster was originally destroyed, or if a monster whose attribute was originally fire is destroyed, while he is in your hand or graveyard, and he triggers off of being added from the deck to the hand, which is important, and we'll talk about why later because of how he is worded, but I'm not going to go over exactly why he's worded the way he is. But I digress. If a fire monster is blown up, like your chicken nugget, he special summons himself, and then whenever he's normal or special summon, he destroys a fire monster in the deck. Very good card. Next, I'm on 2 copies of Fire King Arvada, or Fire King Avatar Arvada. I see people playing 3 Arvada because he's not bad. Whenever he's destroyed, you can summon a Fire King from the graveyard. Effects are negated, it dies on end phase, but it's also a monster negate by destroying a fire monster, which is just advantage. But I felt like 3 of Arvada was a little too much, so I cut him down to 2, and the deck actually felt better with 2 Arvada. And another card that the deck felt better with 2 of is 2 copies of Fire King Barong. I see a lot of people playing 1 of this. I opted for 2 simply because DD Crow exists, and if they get rid of your 1 Barong, then having a backup Barong is never bad, especially because what does it do? Well, if a Fire King or if a monster whose original attribute was fire is destroyed, you can special summon it, and then during the standby phase after it was destroyed, you can add a Fire King card from your deck to your hand. So it's just any Fire King card on the next standby. And then some one-ofs. I am on 1 copy of Fire King Avatar Rangbali. Not as good as Arvada because it doesn't float. But whenever a fire monster is destroyed on the field while he's in your hand, you can special summon him, and then he's a spell trap negate by destroying a fire monster you control or in your hand. And then another weird one that I'm on is 1 copy of Fire King High Avatar Grunix, and this one is ultra rare. Thank you to my friend Dally. Shouts to Dally. And if you guys don't know what OG Grunix does, he's Dark Hole on legs. During the standby phase, after he was destroyed, you summon him and then destroy all other monsters on the board, which is all 1 effect. So something I came up with was this guy on there was a guy that I played against who was on Exo Sister, and I told him this is all 1 effect. So he summons and then board nukes all on resolution of this chain link. Do you have a response? He goes, okay, I'll let it summon and then I'll return ya. And I was like, you can't return ya because your monster will already be destroyed. So this Grunix can catch people off guard. It's not that great against Unchained, but it gets the job done and it helps you trigger some other effects like Grunix or like new Grunix, because new Grunix can summon himself from the graveyard when a fire is destroyed. And that's going to be it for the Fire King monsters. Moving on to the spells, we have 3 copies of the all new Fire King Sanctuary. Sanctuary is part of your combo. Ponix can add this from your deck to your hand, and then whenever it's activated, it places a Fire King Island, which is right here, face up in your field spell zone. And then during your opponent's turn, if they special summon a monster, you can Xyz summon, which is important. And then I believe, oh yeah, and then it has an effect to protect your Fire King Island by destroying a fire monster you control, instead of letting Fire King Island die and then blowing up your board. That effect never really came up. However, the Xyz summon effect is super important, and then placing Fire King Island is super important. So what does Fire King Island do? Well, you can choose to do 1 of 2 effects, but the only one that we really care about is you can destroy a monster in your hand or on your side of the field, and it's any monster. It doesn't have to be a fire. So, moving on, you can destroy a monster in your hand or on your side of the field to add a Fire King monster from your deck to your hand. As simple as that. Like I said, I'm not going to get into detail about the other effect, and I'm trying not to get into too much detail because I don't feel good. So, regardless, so Island is really cool, and then if Island leaves the field by any way, or in any way, shape, or form, it nukes your board, which isn't the worst, but it sucks whenever your opponent is looking for the OTK. And after that, I'm playing 2 copies of Fire King Skyburn. Skyburn is another one of the newer cards, and it's actually a very good card. Skyburn says you can target cards your opponent controls and an equal number of Fire King monsters you control. Destroy all cards that it targets. Super powerful. And then it's also Return of the Dragon Lords in the graveyard, where if one of your Fire Kings would be destroyed, you can banish it instead. super good. And then we are on one copy of Circle of the Fire Kings. This card helps you go for game in the battle phase. Really good card. And this deck does not have a hard time OTKing. And that is it. Oh, wait, let me talk about what Circle is. Circle says you target a fire you control and a fire in your graveyard, destroy the one on the field, summon the one from the graveyard. And that is it for the Fire King cards within the deck. Now we move on to the generic cards. So I'm moving on to the generic cards before the hand traps because I have two monsters that are not hand traps that are generic cards. And those two monsters are one copy of Sacred Phoenix of Nephthys because it is a heavy storm during the next standby phase after it was destroyed, and you can destroy it from the deck with Garunix. And then a card that came up a lot more often than I thought it would. One copy of Fencing Fire Ferret. Now I know what you're all thinking. No way, you got top 4 with Fencing Fire Ferret. But I did. And it actually came up, being able to, in the standby phase, deal with something with Fire Ferret, because Garunix pop Fire Ferret in the deck, Fire Ferret in a new chain, pop a card your opponent controls, burn them for 500. Super simple, super fun, and having access to instant monster removal anytime is really, really nice. And that's it for the generic monsters. I'm not going to go into detail about Nephthys, but I feel like people are going to see Fire Ferret and they're going to be like, this is a joke, but it's not. Next, this is where a lot of the upgrades really start shining through, because it's generic cards that I upgraded, and then I rarity bumped my Garunix, of course, and my Circle of Fire Kings. I rarity bumped that as well. But we have 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity, because Prosperity is really good. There's only one card in the extra deck you really care about, and that is the new Fire King Xyz monster, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. And y'all know what Prosperity does. If you don't, you banish 3 or 6. From your extra deck, face down, your choice of what you banish. And then you excavate that many cards, and add 1 from amongst the excavated cards to your hand. Really, really good card, really strong in this deck. Gives you a way to dig 6 deeper into your deck to find your Ponix, and gets rid of cards you're never going to use in the extra deck. Then I have 2 copies of Crossout Designator and 1 copy of Called by the Grave. Y'all know me, I love my Crossout Designator because a lot of people are on the same hand traps, so I don't know why people aren't playing Crossout, because it's, in a way, 2 extra copies of Called by the Grave, but it also stops Imperm. Which I know there's other ways to stop Imperm, don't get me wrong. Simply get rid of the monster that is being targeted by Imperm, and you dodge the Imperm. However, on another point, just being able to turn off Imperm is better sometimes, or it's something that you have a little bit easier access to. And yeah, I'm not going to dwell on that too long. My brain is fried. So that's it for the generic spells, and now we move on to the hand traps, which 3 ash. These were also added in. The Called by, Crossouts, and Prosperities were added in. Ash Blossom was another card that I added in, which this card is fairly cheap right now, so, you know, if you don't have them, I understand why, because there are people that are against hand traps and refuse to play them, which, kudos to you. I used to be you, but please play hand traps. You'll win more games. Sorry. And then I'm also on 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird and 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. My Imperms are rarity bumped, but Imperm and Droll come in the structure deck. 2 really strong hand traps, and really good for the current format. And that is it for the main deck. Oh. Sorry about all the sniffling, and I'm sorry if it sounds really close. I'm talking very quietly because, well, like I said, I don't feel good. So starting us off in the extract, we have 3 copies of the even bigger chicken, the new Garunix Eternity, Hyang of the Fire King. And he is another Dark Hole on summon. Whenever he's XZ summoned, nuke the board. Except for himself. Then whenever he is destroyed by card effect, you can summon monsters or Fire King monsters from the graveyard with equal material, or up to the number of materials he had when he was destroyed. And then you can once per turn detach a material to target a spell trap your opponent controls and destroy it. And then he gains 500 attack permanently. Pretty good card. I love this card. I rarely summon it, but it's the only Xyz I ever summoned because I'm also on the 3 Coach King, a Giant Trainer, 3 Diamond Direwolf, and then 3 Hita. And then I fleshed out the extra deck because this is all that comes in the structure deck for extra deck options. I fleshed out the structure deck with a copy of Zeus, a copy of Underworld Goddess, and a copy of IP Masquerena. Again, just using what I had on hand, this is what I put in here. And the reason is because Zeus is always going to be good. It's really good against Unchained. Underworld Goddess is a good way to deal with things that you can't normally deal with, and then IP Masquerena is a way to make Underworld Goddess on your opponent's turn. I really like these 3 cards, and these were the only 3 that I added in to the extra deck, and that is it for the extra deck. Now for the side deck, this is where some more cards that I added in come into play. Starting off the side deck with one of the cards I added in, 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. This deck can use Droplet a little well. It's not the best. It's not like the best deck to use Droplet in because your monsters really like to be destroyed rather than sent. But you can always Droplet to send Imperm or whatever from your field. Like in a Chain Link, you can always send an Imperm, and with this is Chain Link 3 or whatever to negate something. And then, yeah, it's just a really decent card. It honestly feels better as time kind of goes. And then another card I added in, which is surprisingly cheap right now as well, is Triple Tactics Talent. Oh, God, my nose. Sorry, guys, my nose is running. I'm sorry, I keep hitting the mic. But Talents is pretty good as well. It's probably going to get worse now that the new ban list is out. And the January 2024 ban list, in my opinion, is a really good ban list. It has its problems, but it's a good ban list. Let me know if you agree down in the comments below. Then I'm also on 3 copies of Herald of the Abyss, because, Pearly. And it's probably one of your better options in the structure deck. Then I'm also on 3 copies of Dark Hole and 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. I never cited in Judgment, Dark Hole, or Talons, but I did cite in Abyss and Droplet at one point. I cited Abyss in a mirror, or my top 4 mirror match. Never saw it because I only cited in 1 copy of it because I couldn't find 2 other cuts for the matchup. I probably could have cut Garunix and 1 other card, but I just didn't because I was so tunnel vision, and that probably cost me. But hindsight 2020. And that is gonna wrap it up for this deck profile. I'm just gonna crazy magic that you guys never see because I always pause the recording to cut it out. I usually do go through and organize these again for y'all, but for this one, I'm just doing this because I feel lazy and I don't feel like stopping the recording, so you guys get to see my laziness in full action. So with that being said, thank you guys for an amazing year. Still pushing for 200 before the end of the year, and we still have a couple of weeks to do that. If we hit it, we hit it. If we don't, we don't. I still want to thank you guys for the amazing support. 189 subscribers is a number I never thought I would hit because I was stuck at 50 for the longest time. And now my channel randomly is like slowly blowing up. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for that, guys. So if this video, or if I hit 200 subscribers, I made a deal with one of my buddies that I would build a deck that I despise, and I'll put a decent effort into it. And I have a couple of other decks planned out because of the new ban list that dropped. So if you guys are excited for my 2024, let me know down in the comments below. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video, possibly next year. Because I don't know when I'm going to be able to make another video unless you guys want to see a combo guide for this. But there are better combo guides for the deck. And with that, like I said, peace out.